Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Space Engineers Plus Me, episode 91. I'm Enigmius, and today we're looking at a ship that would be great if it was equal to the sum of its parts. It doesn't have to be greater than, just equal to the sum of its parts, but we've hit yet another wall. These walls are getting to be a bit of a problem when it comes to ship design. We're going to take a look at what's going wrong and detail our next steps, because we don't give up because things have broken. We just keep doing it until we can't stand the idea of doing it anymore. As you can see, we're hovering in place, and we've got the bore head is rotating at a relatively slow speed. We can adjust that if we wanted to. We've got a new design for the bore head. It's much more simple. It's still a staggered kind of layout. If you were to line up all of the different wings, so to speak, you would find that there are different positions on the drills themselves, so that we would get, ideally, more thorough coverage. Each spin, each rotation of the bore head would remove basically all of the material in the space where the drills were operating, and then we would move the entire ship down to continue drilling. And the key thing that I kind of got stuck in my head with regards to this whole setup is that it has to be able to do it completely automated, because the whole idea became having multiple of these ships deployed from a ship that we build specifically for the purpose of picking these things up and dropping them off. And once you set it up and set it to mine in a certain area, it just goes until you tell it to stop. So that was the plan, the whole idea. But unfortunately, it doesn't want to cooperate. Now, there are a couple of difficulties that have to do with the tuning of the ship and how the ship behaves when you do different things relative to gravity specifically and relative to other moving parts. The biggest one is lowering this ship using just thrusters. Now, I've tried a number of things. I've tried cutting off the thrusters, the lift thrusters that are holding it in place, for 1 second, which is the smallest amount of time, and as we saw in the last episode, that was too long. The ship would fall too far, and it wouldn't really be a really viable way of lowering the ship, just so that we can get the drills deeper and continue drilling. It doesn't matter if we're in contact with the ground. What matters is that we contacted the ground so hard we did damage to the ship, because we have to lower it so many times. You can't damage the ship every time you drop it, or it's only going to be a certain number of drops before the ship itself just falls apart. So we can't have damage from the dropping, which meant turning off the thrusters for a second was out. So what I tried instead was thrusters set to override, specifically for the purpose of pushing the ship down gently whenever you turn those thrusters on. And it worked only slightly better than turning the lift thrusters off altogether. You see, we've got all these thrusters in here, and they're there for a reason, because when this thing has a full cargo container, all of those thrusters are necessary to keep it from basically crashing and not being able to get up again. We can't remove thrusters, and trying to tune all of the individual lift thrusters to kind of balance what's going down and when and out, it's lunacy. So the simple solution of having a couple of small thrusters up top set on override. Did we even keep both? I think we may only have one now. This guy right here. And just having this guy set on pretty much the lowest override value was still too much downward thrust. And I think actually that it was in many ways like turning off the lift thrusters, because when we said to go down, the inertial dampener said, okay, well, we'll turn these guys off. And so many things, and they don't want to work the way that we intended them to. But the one that really kind of threw me for a loop is, as I was trying to diagnose these things, fiddling around with tuning things to make them work, and learning as we go is a very important step in kind of becoming proficient with the game. That's not a bad thing that we would invest a certain amount of time into that. But when we're in the middle of that and we realize that there's something broken that we can't fix, that's when it becomes a frustrating exercise in futility, because it doesn't matter how well you do the thing that you were trying to do. The things that don't work for reasons that you can't control will always bite you in the ass. And what happened was the ship was basically divided into two sections, and the irony was just so uplifting. I have to say, it was such a great experience because we were trying to do some things with the WobbleCopter involving sensors and keeping it level with gyros on override and all these interesting things that may or may not have worked. And what ended up happening was the sensors didn't work because they were all considered to be part of the same ship, and you can't sense what's going on with other parts of the same ship. It just doesn't work. But in this case, the borehead was considered detached at the rotor. So we've got this rotor down here. This was one of the things we mentioned in the last episode that we had neglected to do. It would be an easy fix, would be to basically remove the borehead, put in a rotor, and then put it back. And this allows it to rotate just the borehead and not the entire ship like we had happening in the last episode. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, we loaded into the game and it wasn't recognizing that the rotor was attached to the borehead. So we could be in the upper section of the ship going through wherever we want, whatever menu that we wanted, and it wouldn't say that we had drills on the ship. It wouldn't say that we had the conveyor sorters for the trash and the connectors for the trash. It wouldn't say that we had the gyros down here. It just wouldn't say that we had anything below the rotor whatsoever. And conversely, we could come down here and go to a control panel on one of the gyros, for example, and it would say that we had the gyros and these light armor blocks and all of the conveyor blocks, all the drills, the conveyor sorters, the connectors, all of the stuff that is on the borehead south of the rotor. Said, yeah, that's fine, we got it all. But as far as the panel from the stuff down here was concerned, there was nothing above this rotor. It didn't even actually show the rotor in that panel. It was as though the disconnection came between the rotor head and the conveyor block that the rotor head is attached to. So we had this ship that was divided into two pieces, and the consequence is that we couldn't, for example, turn on the drills from any control up here. We'd have to come down here to do it, and we wouldn't be able to transfer any materials that we were drilling from the drills up to the container at the top of the ship. Kind of defeats the purpose. That was one problem. The second problem is that I kind of decided it was time for a break. I exited the game and I came back and everything was connected again, and I thought, great, this is fantastic. It's gonna work, and it was a one-off thing. I had to go do some other stuff. Life gets in the way sometimes, and I came back and I reloaded the game, and it was again in two sections that didn't recognize that they were attached to one another at all. It's the inconsistencies like this that make it impossible to design around. We can take virtually any game mechanic, and as long as its application is consistent and reliable, we can learn to work with it, and if necessary, work around it in order to get to what we're trying to do. But in the case of something that's behaving differently every time you log into the game, can't do it. And if we can't have this set up reliably, monitoring what was going on with the borehead in conjunction with the timer blocks up top that would be controlling the pacing of how often this thing was lowered down, if we could get the tuning right, then we can't say that this is a fully automated system that we are deploying in numbers to extract the ores that we need to build the things that we want to build. It's just another ship that's probably going to crash within half an hour of leaving it where we left it because stuff is broken. Now, having said all that, this is another example of a ship that's going to get left on the planet's surface for that fine day when things are a little bit more consistent, things behave the way that they're supposed to all the time, and we can work around the things that don't behave the way we thought they would because that was our mistake. We need another plan, and the plan is actually very simple. We've been trying to do these really elegant moving parts that do all kinds of crazy things that make us happy, and I'm not going to say that we're going to get rid of all of those, but I am going to say this whole idea of having little ships going around mining little circles and then stacking them side by side and doing all the crazy things we can to get all the materials out of them that we possibly can, we're just going to have a planet eater. And it's not going to be like a literal planet eater. It's just going to be a very large ship that's designed to remove very large sections of ground very quickly. Again, like we've been doing with some of the other miners, the Atlas Mark II, we're going to have onboard processing just to reduce the amount of mass that is being brought onto the ship and held there for any length of time. And in this case as well, making sure that it has enough thrust so that if we forget about it for a couple of days and come back to it and it's halfway through the planet, joking, but you get the idea, we'll be able to lift it up to the surface and kind of set it down and figure out what we're going to do with all the junk that we've accumulated up to that point. That's what we're going to be doing for the next episode. We're going to get a start on that. We're like we do with any build, we're going to look at the layout, we're going to talk about the specific plans, where things are going, where we want them to go, how they're going to work. And then once it's done, we have to get something extracting materials that's more reliable than the stuff that we've been building. So this one's going to be very, very minimum on moving parts and maximum on reliability and ore extraction capability, so that hopefully someday we can get on to building something else and get to the alien planet where things will just look very different from they are now, but we'll turn on monsters and pirates and all kinds of other things and just go for it and see how our ships really do stack up against the horrible, terrifying world of space engineers with hostile things turned on. So if you want to be notified of that and future episodes, you can always subscribe to my channel. You can follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.